Monday, October 23rd, 2017, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I want to talk about the monetary system, present-day monetary system, which has been around, for over 100 years now, especially in the US, and how rotten to the core, and how corrupt it is and fraudulent as well. And why is that important? Well, because money should act as a utility to society. It's the way to help, people indirectly exchange the fruits of their labor, value, to store their labor, their wealth. It's very important. And if you tinker with that and make it corrupt and not a fair measure of value, you affect the whole of society. And I'd like to say as well that dispel the myth that nowadays we have free market capitalism and that we need more socialism. We don't have free market capitalism. How can we have that if the monetary system is run by a few men and women at central banks and the major banks? We have, a system where a few people can create value out of thin air through fractional reserve banking, which is basically a euphemism for cheating. Because how can you lend something that you don't have? If you and I try to do that, lend someone something that we didn't have, they'd say, oh, you're stupid, you don't have it. But our system now, through central banking and fractional reserve, allows that to happen. Do you really think that when you put $1,000 in the bank and then someone else comes to the bank and says, I want to borrow $1,000, do you think they lend your $1,000? No, they'll lend $9,000 or more. That's fractional reserve. And as I said earlier, money is a utility, of course. And I'm not talking about the fact that everyone, wants to have a lot of money. Of course, people want to be comfortable, but it serves a purpose, money. And for me, the best book that shows what money is all about is this one here by Murray Rothbard of the Austrian School of Economics. What has government done to our money? The case for 100% gold dollar. And I highly recommend this book. You can find it online. I'm not sure if there's a free PDF, but yeah, just Google it. I think the Mises website has it. But basically, he goes through the Austrian school regression analysis of money. How it started, how people used to barter, and that's not as easy to exchange things. And then they found a commodity that had value to people that was the most marketable commodity, or something that everyone wanted, and that was used as money. And gold and silver throughout the ages, throughout the last few thousand years, have been those commodities. They've just been hijacked by the government, and that's why I recommend this book. We want to also, dispel that the myth that I talked about, that socialism is the solution. Because socialism, and if you look at the Karl Marx, Communist Manifesto, one of them is the centralization of credit, which is central banking. So more of the same. We need a system that's, moral, free, because I think everyone, even liberals or conservatives, everyone wants to be free and independent and like self-sufficient, but we need to be honest with ourselves. I know I'm not saying this is a perfect system. Humans are imperfect, but it will be less extreme. What we've got now has become a total abomination, if you want to call it that. The analogy is that, You know, the markets these days are like the Titanic. Just before it sunk, you've got, you know, the people in first class being lured into a party up on the upper deck with music, champagne, you know, all the, you know, all the luxury, and you know, and thinking that nothing is wrong, while you know, the people, the lower classes, or the you know, they're down, you know, or they've realized that things are sinking, but they can't get out. There are a few people, you know, from, you know, that have the wherewithal, who have come out of the system because they can see it. So yeah, our system is a great big Titanic waiting to sink. When it will sink, I don't know. What's the solution? Well, the solution is like honest weights and measures, which is something that's, you know, in Western society, is something that you know, has been ingrained almost in our DNA. It's also that thou shalt not steal, because that's basically what fractional reserve is. It's stealing. And yeah, it's very simple. And even a former central banker, the governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, who was in charge during the financial crisis in '08, he's even come out with a book. I think it was last year. And I've got the book here. And it's Mervyn King, The End of Alchemy: Money, Banking, and the Future of the Global Economy. So, and I quote him here on page, even him is saying, talking about fractional reserve. More radical reforms, page 261. And he says, even though the degree of alchemy of the banking system was much less 50 or more years ago than it is today, it is interesting that many of the most distinguished economists of the first half of the 20th century believed in forcing banks to hold sufficient liquid assets as reserves to back 100% of their deposits. And I go on. They recommended ending the system of fractional reserve banking, under which banks create deposits to finance risky lending and so have insufficient safe cash reserves to back their deposits. So basically, here's the former governor of the Bank of England saying, you know, asking whether we need to go back to 100% backing or no fractional reserve. And he notes that this was even before the system became more of a fraudulent system. He says, even though, you know, he says that the degree of alchemy back then wasn't as bad as it is now, but alchemy is a fraud. You know, it's like, you look at the stories about alchemy, that people were trying to create gold out of lead. That's not possible. So he goes on to say, the elimination of fractional reserve banking was a proposal put forward in 1993 as the Chicago Plan. The proponents of the plan included the brilliant American monetary theorist Irving Fisher and a distinguished group of economists at Chicago, such as Frank Knight, Henry Simons, and Paul Douglas. So, you know, it's not a radical idea to have, you know, 100% backing. You might ask, how are we going to finance things? Well, they're called investment banks. But commercial banks, they're there just to safeguard people's money. If, you know, or, you know, banks are not that important. You know, nowadays we're told that we need a healthy banking system for the economy to work. Maybe in this fraudulent economic system where, you know, never-ending credit and debt, yes. But in an honest economic system of honest weights and measures, where our monetary system is honest and not fraudulent, banks, you know, might be a necessity for the very rich, They don't want to keep a lot of their money at home. They put it in the bank. Or if they want to invest that money, they put it in an investment bank that might get involved in raising equity, for businesses. So, yeah, that's why the system nowadays is so. And the other thing about the system is, since 1971, the great crime of August 15th, 1971, by Richard Nixon, of pulling the gold standard out of the international system. We've, this system of fractional reserve banking has gone into overdrive. And that's why, we've gone from having about $1 trillion. The U.S. has gone from having $1 trillion of national debt in 1980 to having over 20 trillion today. And that's why all the other countries as well in the world basically have become so indebted, because there is no anchor. The bankers and the governments, they control the system now. And the more debt there is, the more government spending there is, the better for them, but the worse it is for the general public. And it's at the root of all, the problems we have nowadays. Am I saying that if we go back to an honest monetary system and a banking system as well, 100% banking, am I saying that the world will be perfect? No, the world will never be perfect, but it will be a little better. It will be better, in my opinion. But it's up to us, and that's why I do my videos, to inform people that, what we have today is not free market capitalism, and we don't need more socialism. We need to, not to be divided left and right. We need to just be honest with ourselves, and it's up to the people to bring about this change. It's difficult, of course, because the people who run the system, they control everything, almost. They endow the universities, they control the media. The general public is ignorant about what I'm talking about. And that's why I'm doing these videos on YouTube. And that's probably why, YouTube is starting to demonetize a lot of people like me, because we're trying to expose, the fraudulent nature of our monetary system. As for the markets, I know we follow the markets. Yeah, I'm going to keep following it. I know it's it's rotten to the core, but it's interesting to look from the outside a little bit, or even to have some kind of exposure. Yeah, so if you enjoyed this video, please like, share far and wide, especially with younger people as well. Well, people of all backgrounds and ages. I think a lot of people need to know about this. And also subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on steemit.com, and I'm also on twitter.com. I'll talk to you later. Take care.